U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen's visit to China is likely to take place this July. Many media outlets predict she will meet with Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng. As Xi Jinping's close ally, he replaced former Vice Premier Liu He. Traditionally, this position is the equivalent of the U.S. Treasury Secretary in charge of China's financial policy. This has raised concerns about China's economic recovery as the vice premier has a notable track record of building a ghost city in Tianjin. The ghost town is in Tianjin's Binhai New Area. It consists of two main parts, the Yujiabao Financial District and the Xiaoliaowan Business District across the river. Chinese media reported that as of 2014, the local government had invested 60 billion yuan, or nearly $8.4 billion in building this area. Once envisioned as China's Manhattan, this area is now seen as a monument to the collapse of China's growth model. Tianjin is a metropolis just 70 miles southeast of China's capital, Beijing. In 2009, following the global financial crisis, He Lifeng became a senior official in Tianjin. That same year, the Yujiabao Financial District project was launched. He oversaw the construction of this massive new district, known as China's Manhattan. This senior financial official's previous experience relied on the construction of highways, bridges, and tunnels to promote economic growth. A few years further back, in June 2005, 15 state ministers were summoned to a fancy hotel in Tianjin's Binhai New Area for a 3-day closed-door discussion. It was decided that in 3 years, through an unprecedented package of incentives, the stagnant saline land of Tianjin would be turned into the third tier of China's economic growth. It's a great opportunity to drive the relatively backward northern region to achieve economic leapfrog development. In the design envisioned by these officials such as He Lifeng, Tianjin's Manhattan would take the initiative to undertake the relocation of Beijing's financial industry, promote the settlement of major projects with an investment of more than RMB 100 million, and create a high-end service base for Beijing. According to the planning at the time, all projects were mandated to have a floor area greater than 30,000 square meters and a minimum of 20 floors for the main building. However, all the projects were suspended or slowed down one after another. In fact, in addition to the overall project being stalled, what's even more troublesome is that the amenities in the business district are virtually nil. Even during the day, few people are seen among these skyscrapers that are covered with thick dust. It's just like a ghost town. The Wall Street Journal reported in 2019 that 4/5 of the office space here was empty. Construction of buildings had stopped, leaving only the skeleton of the towering structures. What we see are empty streets, long unfinished office buildings, shopping malls, and IMAX cinemas that seem to be permanently closed. Hello everyone, today is September 23rd, 2022. Today, we take you to experience the central business district of Binhai New Area. The first thing that caught my eye was the once feverishly famous Country Garden Phoenix Hotel. It hasn't yet been opened for business yet. This is how the Chinese media describes it. Instead of the expected high-tech talent, the grand and luxuriously designed buildings have become a haven for a large homeless population. The local government has encouraged Chinese private developers to build their own homes here. Some have, but no one is buying. Many of the buildings in the area are now collateral for huge overdue loans held by local banks. Some have simply gone under. For example, this residential project in the new waterfront area called Bay Fortune Center has fallen apart. This neighborhood offers two types of homes, villas and residential towers with retail space on the ground floor. So far, only one phase has been built with about 150 households. It has stopped construction now. No water or electricity is connected as the developer has discovered that the economic development of this new area isn't happening and they can't sell the homes. So they aren't going to continue the construction. Homeowners who have bought the unfinished or rotten-tail building find out that there is no recourse channel for them, and they can do nothing about it. They can only vent on the banner, "Who is playing the rascal?" Another example is this high-profile building struck by lightning, the 117 building. The 117 building has 117 floors and is part of the Binhai High-Tech Park. With a structural height of 596.5 meters at the time, it became the second tallest building in the world after the Burj Khalifa in Dubai, and the tallest structure under construction in China at the time. In the developer's plan, the tower would have the world's tallest sky swimming pool, the world's tallest revolving restaurant, etc. But now it's the tallest unfinished or rotten-tail building in China. It started construction in 2008 and the main structure of the building was topped out in 2015. When people thought the building would officially open in the coming year and become a new landmark in Tianjin, it suddenly pushed the pause button. The reason is simple: they are out of money. Its developer, Golden Group, said it had invested more than US $5.5 billion in the building. At the time, the developer's confidence in 117 was based on Tianjin's unique economic and geographical advantages coupled with the favorable government policies, which will inevitably make it the financial center of northern China. Seeing the demand for quality properties in Tianjin, we seized the opportunity to build our flagship project. But this judgment is out of touch with the actual situation in Tianjin. The rotten tail or unfinished buildings can be seen as a snapshot of the current real estate frenzy in China. If they succeed, they will be honored as city landmarks. If they fail, they will be turned into city wounds. More than a decade has passed, perhaps Tianjin people have gotten used to this wound. In recent years, the ghost town of Tianjin has become even more terrifying because the name is no longer just metaphoric. In the Binhai New area, an urn community has emerged among the residential buildings. 16 residential towers have been occupied with more than 100,000 urns over a period of 6 years. In recent years, Chinese people who can't afford a burial ground have bought a residential home nearby to put urns of ashes in. After the news of the urn community came to light, the local government argued that this community was transformed into an urn hall for public interest and intended for funeral purposes. The urn hall was only made to look like a residential community. We can't verify whether this claim is actually true. Residential buildings are cheaper than cemeteries, which is a snapshot of the sudden cooling of China's real estate industry. China's economy is in rapid decline, and everything is happening so fast that the officials who are in charge of planning for the national economy don't seem to be prepared. A real 51% plunge and no takers. Tianjin Dongli property, its peak price was up to 26,000 yuan a square meter, now 16,000 yuan a square meter. Tianjin district, its highest price was up to 40,000 yuan a square meter, now 25,000 yuan a square meter, with very few transactions. Residential buildings in the Binhai New area used to sell at 15,000 yuan a square meter, now selling at 8,000 yuan. Still, there is no buyer. Really, golden location that used to sell at 12,000 yuan, now down to 6,000 yuan a square meter. This phenomena for real estate investors is simply a catastrophe. They have really lost money. The most terrible thing is, even with such a low price, there is no one to take over. They have been listed for half a year to a year, but can't be sold. This is the current state of the Tianjin Port Pacific Terminal. China's economy has been heavily relying on construction for the future, and there are many signs that construction has been overdone. For a long time, China has borrowed heavily for construction and then expected to pay off its debts with rapid economic growth. The government sells large amounts of land to developers, borrows money to subsidize construction and jobs, and new cities emerge. It's this model that has helped China build skyscrapers and high-speed rails, ushering in an era of prosperity. But even before the epidemic began, China's economic growth was already slowing down. The cycle of borrowing new money to cover old debts is suddenly interrupted, a crisis emerges, and the debt problems worsen. Today, Tianjin is one of China's slowest growing economies and one of the regions with the most serious fiscal problems. 2023 information on the second batch of Tianjin municipal government bonds disclosed that Tianjin's local government debt balance reached RMB 864.6 billion or US 119.2 billion in 2022, with a debt ratio of 295.1%, ranking first in the country. This is the government's data. If that's the case, the real situation should be even worse. Back in 2019, before the epidemic, the US-based Rhodium Group estimated that based on China's most macroscopic borrowing indicator, total social finance, the total debt of Tianjin's municipal government, businesses, and household exceeded US 760 billion. The total annual interest rate for all borrowers in Tianjin is 12 times its annual nominal economic growth rate. China's Manhattan Project should have contributed to the enormous debt of Tianjin because each of its sub-projects came from either provincial and municipal government financial expenditures or state-owned enterprise capital. Despite the large number of vacant buildings, the local government continues to borrow. According to data from China's central bank, the People's Bank of China, the city of Tianjin, and entities related to the local Binhai New Area government raised US 36 billion through new loans in 2018 prior to the epidemic. Combined with the US 8.4 billion already invested, the Go City project is like a bottomless pit, gobbling up massive amounts of capital. At the time, Lifeng was the #1 leader of the National Development and Reform Commission (NDRC), a central government agency that approves all major development projects. In other words, he could authorize banks to lend more money to Tianjin. The NDRC has always been a rather unique super ministry in the Chinese government system, known as the Little State Council because of its large and broad mandate. Why then did the Tianjin Manhattan Project fail so badly? Besides the sudden cooling off of the Chinese economy, which made it impossible to borrow new money to fill the old hole, the plan is inherently flawed. Although Tianjin has a port, it has been a city of heavy industry for a long time. The absolute dominance of heavy industry has led to a slow growth in the per capita income of Tianjin residents. Unlike Shenzhen and Shanghai, this city is bound and influenced by the central government when it introduces various economic policies due to its proximity to the capital, Beijing. According to data disclosed by Binhai New Area when the Financial Center project in Yujiabao was launched in 2009, i.e. by the end of 2010, the proportion of heavy industries in the area was as high as 87.28%, and industries with high water and energy consumption such as oil extraction and processing, chemical industry, etc. dominated the area. With such heavy industries as the mainstay of the industrial structure, senior Communist Party officials thought that everything would come once the high-rise buildings were built. High-tech development companies would come and the financial elite would come. They believed that the dream of creating a financial center could be realized by huge investments through policy bonuses and fiscal incentives, without regard to market capacity, but with the planned government promotion. The party and the government are working on all kinds of policies to create the atmosphere and foster the environment to allow people to concentrate on innovation without interference, with confidence and passion. China will definitely achieve a great renaissance. The Tianjin New Area currently has a resident population of about 3 million and is planned to have a capacity of about 6 million by 2030. But the question is, where will the 3 million people come from? Let's take a look back at Tianjin's planning goal. Grasp the opportunities of the integration of Beijing, Tianjin, and Hebei province as well as the free trade zone. Take the initiative to undertake the relocation of Beijing's financial industry. Promote the settlement of major projects with an investment of over 100 million yuan and build a high-end service base for Beijing. Does this goal sound somewhat familiar? Yes, it sounds very similar to the Xiong'an New Area in Hebei province. Tianjin and Xiong'an New Area are just over 100 kilometers apart in space. On April 1, 2017, the Xiong'an New Area was officially launched by the Central Committee of the CCP and the State Council by issuing a notice. The news was once considered an April Fool's joke. Now the Xiong'an new area is also a rotten tail project. If you're interested in it, you can click on the link in the section below. The Xiong'an new area is positioned as a centralized hosting site for the unbundling of Beijing's non-capital functions. It's to serve as a high-level socialist modern city, a new engine for a modern economic system, and a national model for promoting high-quality development. Chinese media reported that it's another new area of national significance after the Shenzhen Special Administrative Region and Pudong New Area. It's a major plan for the millennium and a national event. Whether or not the Xiong'an new area can reverse its disastrous fate, there is no doubt that it's diverting public resources and economic resources from Beijing and Tianjin, especially from central enterprises. There will also be competition between the two areas for resources and high-tech industries. The Xiong'an new area will also have a direct impact on Tianjin's economic status. Neither the central government nor the Tianjin municipal government knows what to do next. Because if the political will of the new Binhai area goes away, bank loans will start to dry up and the whole region will be in trouble. Perhaps officials are counting on a return to economic growth to help the city get out of its problems. They're also expecting that tech companies looking for alternatives to high-priced real estate in places like Beijing and the southern city of Shenzhen might find Tianjin attractive. But one only has to look at what happened to Jack Ma and his company Alibaba and understand how unrealistic such an idea is today. Finally, let's look at the current Vice Premier Lifeng and what he will bring to China. The relationship between Lifeng and Xi Jinping dates back to the 1980s when they were both local officials in Fujian province. A source told the Wall Street Journal that Lifeng was one of a small group of people who attended the wedding of Xi Jinping in 1987. He should have a deep affinity for the Binhai new area in Tianjin. In early 2009, he was transferred to Tianjin as the Deputy Party Secretary of the Tianjin Municipal Committee and the head of the Binhai new area. The Chinese media reported that during his tenure in Tianjin's Binhai New Area, he lived in the Binhai New Area building and often held meetings around 9 p.m., late into the night. He said on public occasions, "It is rare for a person to encounter an opportunity like developing Binhai in his lifetime, and there is no reason not to do a good job." Despite the power the Vice Premier now wields, the Xiong'an New Area is the dream of the Communist Party leader Xi Jinping. If one of the two new areas had to be sacrificed, it would be the Manhattan of Tianjin. For Western investors eager to see China's economy recover quickly after the outbreak, Vice Premier Lifeng is likely to disappoint them. Since his political views and economic policies follow those of Xi Jinping, there is no reason why he wouldn't follow the practices of the CCP bureaucrats. Not surprisingly, China's economy is headed for an even more pessimistic and difficult path.